There's a Florida man, he had a plan. This Florida man planned to kill his ex-girlfriend and blame Black Lives Matter. I kid you not. This was his actual plot. As a matter of fact, he's not the only person to come up with a plot like this, by the way. 51-year-old Florida man planned to have his 22-year-old ex-girlfriend, her sister, and her brother-in-law killed, and then pin the murders on Black Lives Matter protesters. That's what he planned to do. His name is Daniel Slater. Let's get a picture up of Daniel. That's him. Daniel Slater hired a hitman to carry out the crimes, but it was stopped when the individual turned out to be an undercover FBI agent, thank God. The plot conspired between May and June of 2020 in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and while protests following the Minneapolis murder of George Floyd were taking place across the country. Slater pleaded guilty of murder for hire in a deal. He is expected to be sentenced to the maximum penalty for his crimes, 10 years in prison. I know this seems extreme, right? And it is. But remember, he's not the only one who has come up with a plan to kill family members and then blame it on Black Lives Matter protesters. Now, BLM, they're blamed for a lot of things. They're blamed for a lot of things and they don't fit. The blame does not fit. And so he figured, let's just blame them for murder as well. Murdering his people, murdering people that he knows. It was another woman's death that started an investigation into Slater. A 26-year-old woman who was acquainted with the man was found dead in Miami's Everglades National Park, February 2020. Court documents revealed that Slater wanted Breonna Slauba to kidnap and kill his girlfriend, Breonna Kane, but Slauba died from an accidental drug overdose before completing the murders. The investigation into her death led them to another person who knew of Slater's plot and cooperated with the FBI. So this all happened because somebody else died under suspicious circumstances. Good gracious. Jordan, this is deep, man.
Yeah, this is bizarre. Reading this story was really unnerving. And I think one thing that kind of stood out was how this guy thought it would be believable. Not that he's a rational actor, but he thought it would be believable if he pinned this on Black Lives Matter. Now, why is that? I think you could argue there is a strong, overwhelming force on the right to demonize Black Lives Matter and other activist groups, and they turn them into this omnipotent, omnipresent boogeyman. That's the perfect villain for everything. We see this also with anti-fascist protests, and they say Antifa's behind all this kind of stuff. And in a military context, people will say ISIS is everywhere. You saw huge investments in local police because they were afraid, and the transfer of military surplus gear to police departments because of the looming threat of ISIS everywhere. And when you have these types of existential threats, it's so easy to get people, especially white people in America, horrified. And they're easily manipulatable then. So this guy thought, hey, I'll kill my family, or I'll have someone kill my family, and I'll just blame Black Lives Matter. And it shows this kind of this brainwashing that the right has been so effective at in convincing people that Black Lives Matter is this ever-present looming threat right around the corner. You never know. You saw it play out in St. Louis when the McCluskeys went outside with guns because Black Lives Matter was just marching down the street. That was a threat to them. That presence was a violent threat to them, and that's how they wanted to respond. And my thought after that was, imagine the hysteria on the right and in right-wing media circles had he been successful. How quickly they would have ran with this narrative and demonized Black Lives Matter. It's horrifying, but this is the pipeline that they've created, and this is the narrative they enrich.
And it also shows his knowledge, his awareness of the narrative connected to Black Lives Matter, and how he believed that because of that narrative, he would be able to get away with murder and simply pointing the finger at individuals who are connected to Black Lives Matter, because he understands how they are being demonized, not only in the media, but by members of law enforcement. And he made an assumption that if he could figure out how to do this murder and pin it on a person connected to BLM, that person would be severely prosecuted regardless of the actual evidence. And here's the most ironic thing, brother. He may have been right. He may have been correct. If it had not been for this FBI undercover agent being involved in the middle of this from the beginning.